So, good morning. Today we're working on a very simple exercise called the self-compassion pause. And this exercise actually only takes 1 to 3 minutes to do, but I'm hoping it's something that you will do several times during today. And hopefully, if it's something you like doing, that it's something you will start building into your life on a daily basis. So the aim of this exercise is to create a more self-compassionate attitude. So people who are high in self-compassion treat themselves with care and with kindness when they experience negative events. So instead of judging themselves or blaming themselves in some way, they are supportive of themselves. So all of us have an inner critic, and the inner critic is the voice that says, oh, you didn't do that properly. Oh, you're no good at this. Or you're just not good enough. You should have done that differently. I think everybody can, ponder that voice for themselves. We all have it, but some of us have a much stronger inner critic than other people. It's to do really with, formative events in childhood and other factors. But for some people, that negative inner critic can really cause emotional distress. So what's really important is to develop the opposite of the inner critic, which is the inner nurturer. So I see people in clinic all the time who set such high standards for themselves. In chemotherapy, we call it unrelenting standards. So they never feel quite good enough in themselves or about anything that they've done. And this is so stressful for us psychologically and physiologically. When we listen to our inner critic, we trigger a part of the brain called the amygdala. And the amygdala is basically the fear part of the brain. When we trigger the amygdala, we feel more anxious, and we're possibly going to trigger adrenaline. And even worse, we might trigger another chemical called cortisol, which is a very strong stress product in the body. Now, when we are compassionate with ourselves, we trigger a different chemical, and that's called oxytocin. And oxytocin is the chemical that is released when we feel calm, when we feel safe, and when we, have a feeling of trust in what's going on around us. So we literally can change our biochemistry depending on whether we are compassionate towards ourselves or not. So during a time like this, during this really difficult pandemic, when life is very challenging, learning to cultivate and to listen to an inner nurturer, a voice that says, oh, you did that well, or you're good at this, or okay, you didn't do that brilliantly, but you'll do that better the next time, is just incredibly important for our psychological well-being. So the key to growing any psychological resource is to have repeated experiences of doing it, because then this turns into lasting neural and structural changes in the brain and in the functions of the brain, and it makes it easier for us to access states of well-being and positive emotions. So Brené Brown, the American writer, some of you may have seen her online, she's fantastic. And she says when she's trying to achieve anything in her life, she acknowledges the inner critic and she says, okay, you can come along. She gives them a ringside seat, and then she says to the inner critic, you're welcome to be there, but I won't be listening to you. So this is our challenge, is to know that the inner critic is there, but not be listening to it, and instead to develop an inner voice that is much more compassionate towards ourselves. So we can use the self-compassion pause, and this is a really simple exercise. So anytime today when you are experiencing negative emotions, maybe you're suffering, maybe you're feeling stressed, maybe you're self-shaming, maybe you're judging yourself about something and making yourself uncomfortable, then just take a moment and just bring your awareness to yourself and to your breathing, and then just say something soothing to yourself, as if you were soothing a friend. And you just place your hands on your body, and you might say something very specific like, I forgive you just the way I would forgive any friend who did anything, or this moment is perfect just as it is, or I accept myself just as I am. Whatever works for you, just work on discovering that inner nurturer and listening to that voice. And this is just really important at the moment with the pandemic, because I see people and I talk to people on online counselling, and I see them having themselves under pressure to do all of these things and be all of these things, and actually this is a time where we need more than any other time to be deeply compassionate with the self. So I hope that exercise is useful, and see you tomorrow morning.